Daniel had always believed he was destined for something more. In his early 30s, he had a good job, a decent apartment in the city, and a tight circle of friends. From the outside, his life seemed solid, even enviable. Yet each morning he woke up with a hollow feeling that grew sharper with each passing day. A steady undercurrent of self-doubt gnawed at him, making him question his worth and his purpose. His job, which he once found exciting, now felt like an endless cycle of reports, deadlines, and unfulfilled goals. Every day, he felt more like a cog in a machine, lacking direction, control, and the courage to change things. One evening, after a particularly frustrating day at work, Daniel found himself wandering into a bookstore, trying to escape his restless thoughts. He wandered through the shelves, touching the spines of novels and guides, feeling the quiet of the space slowly calm him. His eyes landed on a small section labeled Philosophy and Mindfulness. Without thinking, he pulled a slim, unassuming book titled Stoic Lessons for Modern Living from the shelf. Flipping through its pages, he found a chapter titled Act as if you are the best, confidence through action. The title intrigued him, and as he read further, he found himself drawn to the idea that confidence and resilience were not traits one was born with. They could be practiced, embodied, and eventually made real. That night, Daniel read the chapter from start to finish, his mind buzzing with a sense of behind. The message was simple yet powerful. Act as though you are the best, and you will begin to become the best version of yourself. Inspired by this philosophy, he decided to dedicate 1 week to living by the principles he'd read about. He knew it would be challenging pretending to be confident, and grounded was far from natural for him, but he also knew he had to try. If he wanted a life of purpose and fulfillment, he had to be willing to act, even if it meant facing discomfort and stepping outside his comfort zone. Habit 1: Morning affirmations and self-dialogue. First morning of his experiment. Daniel woke up to the shrill sound of his alarm, feeling groggy and far from confident. He sat up in bed and took a deep breath, recalling the first exercise from the book, Morning Affirmations. This would be his initial step toward living with intention, starting his day by setting a mental tone that aligned with the person he wanted to become. He hesitated, feeling a little foolish, but then whispered, "I am capable. I am confident. Today, I will act with purpose." His voice wavered, and he could feel the cynicism bubbling up. "This is silly," he thought. "I don't believe any of this." Yet, he forced himself to continue, repeating the words until they sounded less like a foreign mantra and more like a possibility he could entertain, if only for that day. At work, he tried to carry that energy forward, repeating the affirmations in his head whenever self-doubt crept in. It was challenging. He felt like an imposter. His thoughts often drifted to critical questions. What if I fail? What if people see right through me? But each time he countered with his new mantra. By lunchtime, Daniel noticed a subtle difference. He was slightly more assertive in meetings, contributing ideas without worrying about judgment, and his usual tendency to overthink had quieted, if only a little. The feeling was liberating, albeit fragile. Habit 2: Embracing challenges with a growth mindset. The next principle Daniel adopted was embracing challenges as opportunities. The book described this habit as a growth mindset. The idea that every obstacle, no matter how daunting, is an opportunity to strengthen one's character and abilities. Midweek, his resolve was tested. Daniel's boss assigned him a project with a tight deadline, and his initial reaction was one of panic and dread. Ordinarily, he would have stressed about every small detail, but instead, he took a deep breath and reminded himself of his commitment to the Stoic mindset. He approached the task with determination, telling himself, "This is a chance to prove to myself that I can handle pressure. I'm capable." As he worked through the project, he noticed his approach to the stress shifting. Instead of allowing his anxiety to consume him, he viewed each part of the process as an exercise in resilience. When he made mistakes, he corrected them without self-recrimination. When he felt the familiar pang of self-doubt, he repeated his morning affirmations. Completing the project felt like a small victory, not only because he met the deadline, but because he had done so with a calm, focused mindset. He began to understand the power of believing in his own capabilities. Even when doubt lingered, habit 3, practicing resilience in social interactions, was social interaction. He often felt anxious around others, overanalyzing his words and actions, worry about how he was perceived. To him, the idea of acting as if he was the best in social settings felt intimidating, even disingenuous. But he knew that if he wanted to truly change, he had to push past these fears. The third habit he adopted was to approach social interactions with a resilient mindset, focusing only on what he could control, his own actions and responses. At a networking event later that week, Daniel applied this principle. Normally, he would have clung to the edges of the room, avoiding eye contact and waiting for someone to approach him. But this time, he reminded himself that he was here to connect, to learn, and to grow. He approached a group of colleagues, introduced himself, and engaged in conversation without obsessing over how he was perceived. His heart pounded, but he maintained eye contact, nodded attentively, and offered his thoughts with conviction. It wasn't easy. He could feel the familiar discomfort of self-consciousness, the urge to retreat. But each time he faltered, he took a deep breath, reminded himself of his commitment, and continued. By the end of the night, he felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. It wasn't that he had transformed into a social butterfly overnight, but he had proven to himself that he could face discomfort without letting it control him. This experience opened a new door for him, showing him that confidence wasn't a fixed trait, but a choice he could make each time he engaged with others. Emotional and mental struggles. Despite his efforts, Daniel still struggled with doubt and skepticism. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was pretending, that his newfound habits were superficial, like a thin layer of armor that could easily crack under pressure. In his quiet moments, the critical voice in his head would ask, "Who are you kidding? People can see right through you." These moments of doubt felt like setbacks, threatening to undo his progress. He worried that his confidence was nothing more than a facade, a temporary boost that would dissolve as soon as he faced real adversity. But each morning he returned to his affirmations. Each day, he repeated the principles he'd set for himself, even on days when he didn't feel particularly strong or confident. He remembered a line from the book, "Consistency, not perfection, is the goal." Slowly, he began to internalize this idea. It wasn't about transforming overnight or becoming invincible. It was about showing up every day, taking small steps, and letting those steps accumulate. By the end of the first week, Daniel had experienced small but profound changes. He hadn't suddenly become fearless, nor had he completely silenced his self-doubt, but he had taken control of his thoughts in a way he hadn't thought possible. He realized that confidence wasn't about being the best. It was about choosing to act as though he was capable, even when he felt otherwise. This realization gave him a newfound sense of power, a quiet strength that came from within, not from external validation. Reflection on initial progresses. The week came to a close. Daniel reflected on his progress. He had faced moments of discomfort and self-doubt, but he had also discovered that he was capable of resilience. Each habit, from morning affirmations to embracing challenges, had served as a stepping stone, bringing him closer to the version of himself he aspired to be. He was beginning to understand that confidence wasn't about eliminating fear, but about acting in spite of it. He knew he still had a long way to go, that true transformation would take time. But for the first time in a long time, he felt a sense of hope, a belief that he could shape his life with intention and purpose. With this realization, Daniel prepared himself for the next week, ready to dive deeper into the Stoic habits that had already begun to change his life. Daniel entered his second week with a renewed sense of purpose. The first week had tested his patience and resilience, yet it had also revealed something he hadn't anticipated. He was capable of change. It was this small but powerful realization that propelled him forward. He saw the value in pushing himself further, and he committed to a new set of Stoic habits to deepen his transformation. This next phase would challenge him to confront his fears head-on, step further outside his comfort zone, and, he hoped, achieve a lasting sense of confidence and self-worth. Reflective journaling one evening after a long day at work, Daniel opened his journal. The habit of journaling had always intrigued him, but he had often dismissed it as something that wouldn't suit him. Yet, inspired by the Stoic practice of reflecting on one's actions and thoughts, he decided to give it a serious try. He began by writing down his experiences from the day, the moments he'd felt confident, the moments he'd stumbled, and the feelings that had surfaced. With each line he wrote, he felt as though he was peeling back layers, uncovering parts of himself he had ignored for too long. He discovered that his doubts were deeply rooted, stemming from experiences he hadn't fully acknowledged. Writing about his insecurities and his small victories allowed him to confront these feelings in a way he hadn't anticipated. Over time, this habit became a powerful tool for self-awareness. By seeing his thoughts on paper, he could better understand the patterns of his mind, the self-doubt, the fears, the rare but growing moments of pride. He found himself more forgiving of his mistakes and more patient with his journey, realizing that growth was not a straight path, but a series of ups and downs. Habit 5, the power of visualizing success inspired by a Stoic practice, known as premeditatio malorum, the preparation for adversity. Daniel incorporated visualization into his routine. Before tackling challenging tasks or social situations, he spent a few quiet moments envisioning himself handling the situation with confidence. He imagined his voice steady and clear, his posture strong, his mind calm and composed. This habit, though seemingly simple, had a profound effect. By mentally rehearsing his responses to potential obstacles, he found himself more prepared and less anxious when they occurred in reality. When a high-stakes presentation approached, Daniel employed this habit with greater intention. He visualized himself speaking with confidence, facing his colleagues without fear. On the day of the presentation, his usual nerves flared up, but he reminded himself of his visualization. The practice grounded him, and he delivered his presentation with a confidence he didn't know he possessed. For the first time, he experienced the impact of seeing himself as capable before stepping into a situation, a mental preparation that allowed him to face his fears with poise. Habit 6, practicing detachment from outcomes. As Daniel's confidence grew, he found himself increasingly driven by the Stoic principle of focusing only on what he could control. This habit, he realized, was more challenging than any other he had practiced. He was used to attaching his self-worth to outcomes, whether it was success at work, acceptance from peers, or validation from others. But now, he sought to detach from these external markers, understanding that true confidence came from within. One day, a colleague at work dismissed one of his ideas during a meeting. Daniel felt his temper flare, his pride bruised. In the past, he might have internalized the rejection, doubting his worth and retreating into self-criticism. But this time, he paused and reminded himself of his commitment to Stoic detachment. He took a deep breath, reminded himself that he could not control others' reactions, and continued to contribute without seeking validation. This subtle shift was liberating. By letting go of his need for approval, he freed himself from the weight of others' opinions and found peace in simply doing his best. Emotional breakthrough. Daniel experienced a breakthrough that felt transformative. He noticed that his mindset had shifted from one of doubt and self-criticism to one of resilience and self-belief. During a team discussion, he voiced his ideas confidently and defended his perspective without hesitation. For the first time, he felt no urge to apologize, no need to shrink. His colleagues listened, and some even nodded in agreement. A warmth spread through him, a feeling of pride, of knowing that he was finally becoming the person he had always aspired to be. This emotional breakthrough extended beyond work. In his personal life, Daniel began setting boundaries, expressing his needs, and speaking his truth. He stopped apologizing for his opinions and started valuing his own voice. The impact was immediate. His relationships grew stronger, more honest, and more fulfilling. He no longer feared rejection, because he understood that his worth wasn't tied to others' acceptance. This shift was profound, and it filled him with a sense of freedom he hadn't felt in years. Changing relationships. Daniel's newfound confidence brought a shift in his relationships, both personal and professional. He became more present with friends and family, engaging in deeper conversations, expressing empathy without losing himself. His colleagues noticed the change too, commenting on his assertiveness and calm demeanor. He no longer avoided difficult conversations. Instead, he faced them with the calm resolve he had cultivated. By focusing on what he could control, his actions, his responses, he experienced a new level of connection and respect from those around him. As the second week drew to a close, Daniel took time to reflect on the journey he had undertaken. The decision to act as if he were the best, to carry himself with confidence and purpose, had transformed him in ways he hadn't imagined. What began as an experiment in Stoic philosophy had become a path to self-discovery and empowerment. He had faced his fears, challenged his insecurities, and discovered a strength within himself that he didn't know existed. Reflecting on the week, sitting down with his journal, Daniel wrote about the changes he had experienced over the past 2 weeks. He had learned that confidence wasn't about perfection or being the best in comparison to others. It was about believing in his own worth and showing up authentically. He recognized that growth wasn't linear. There were moments of doubt, setbacks, and days when he still felt small. But each habit he had practiced had laid a foundation, giving him tools to navigate life's challenges with resilience and grace. Through morning affirmations, he had learned the power of setting an intention and aligning his actions with his values. By embracing challenges, he had discovered the freedom of seeing obstacles as opportunities. Practicing resilience in social interactions had shown him that confidence was a choice he could make each time he engaged with others. Reflective journaling had given him insight into his patterns, while visualization had strengthened his resolve. Detaching from outcomes had liberated him from the need for external validation, allowing him to find peace within himself. Long-term commitments. Daniel knew that his journey didn't end here. These habits weren't a quick fix. They were lifelong practices that required consistency and patience. He decided to make these Stoic principles a permanent part of his life, setting intentions to continue his affirmations, journaling, and detachment practices. He understood that self-confidence wasn't a destination, but a path, a daily choice to believe in his worth and act with purpose. Each time he faced a challenge, he would remind himself of the power he held within. He realized that the Stoic principles he had embraced weren't just about acting confident. They were about building a resilient mindset, one that could withstand life's trials and emerge stronger. This commitment filled him with a quiet strength, a sense of peace that came from knowing he was on a path of growth and self-discovery, a call to action for the reader. Daniel's story offers a simple yet profound lesson: that true confidence isn't about being the best in the eyes of others. It's about acting as if you are the best version of yourself, even when doubt lingers. He encourages the reader to take that first step, no matter how small. He suggests starting with a single habit, whether it's morning affirmations, reflective journaling, or embracing challenges and committing to it for a week. He urges the reader to act with purpose, to speak with conviction, and to believe in their worth, not because they are flawless, but because they are capable of growth. Daniel reminds the reader that change doesn't happen overnight. There will be moments of doubt, days when the old fears resurface. But with each step, each choice to act with confidence, they will begin to build a foundation of self-belief. He concludes with a simple yet powerful message. Act as if you are the best, because in choosing to believe in yourself, you become the best version of you. Conclusion and final reflection. In the quiet of his apartment, Daniel closed his journal, feeling a sense of calm settle over him. He had started this journey searching for confidence, but he had found something deeper, a sense of inner peace, a belief in his own worth that didn't rely on anyone else's approval. He knew he would continue to face challenges, that doubts would resurface, and that growth would be a lifelong journey. But he was ready, armed with the Stoic principles that had guided him through these 2 weeks. As he looked forward to the days ahead, Daniel felt a quiet confidence within himself. He didn't need to be the best in the eyes of others. All he needed was to believe in his own worth, to act with purpose, and to trust that he was capable of becoming the person he aspired to be. With this realization, he stepped forward into his life with a newfound strength, knowing that the journey of self-discovery was only just beginning.